Welcome back, everybody, to the Insightful Podcast. We gain insight in order to move forward in life. I got the Celsius. We're going to jump straight into this podcast. It's going to be about the art of being alone. And no, it's not a sad podcast or something like that. We're just going to be going over the benefits of being alone and how being alone and feeling lonely are two different things. So, if this is something that interests you, stay tuned until the end, and I know you'll find value from it. I always like doing these podcasts unfiltered, raw, no cuts. So you're going to see me sipping on the Celsius pretty frequently. I know I'm not sponsored, obviously not. I only got 500 subscribers, but without all that bullshit, let's just jump straight into it. So, solitude does not equal loneliness. Being alone doesn't mean being lonely. Solitude is a conscious choice to reconnect with yourself without external noise, right? When it came to the pandemic, everyone felt lonely. Everyone was at home by themselves and they couldn't see their friends. They couldn't see certain family members. And it was very difficult to go out and see people, right? In this time period, a lot of people felt lonely, but what I decided to do was reflect back on myself, reflect back on who I was. And it was through this that I actually started to see self-improvement, and I started to see areas of me that needed to be changed and needed to be improved upon. And I think that's where it comes from, is when you're constantly busy and constantly something on your mind, you're constantly seeing people, all these different things. It's too much noise. You cannot reconnect with yourself. You can't reconnect with your purpose. Kevin Lavroni always used to say in those, well, not always used to say, but in that one video, he would speak about how being alone is where you find your purpose. Being alone is where you can hear God and you can, reflect, right? So a lot of the times that if you feel lonely, you could kind of change your perspective and think, okay, maybe in this time period of my life, I'm able to be alone and I'm able to figure things out, right? A lot of the, geniuses in the world and a lot of these people that once existed, their best ideas, their strategies, whatever the case may have been, they were always found these ideas being alone, right? When you're constantly scrolling and, seeking that next dopamine hit, or you can't be alone in your own thoughts, you have to call someone right away. You really think you're going to come up with any good ideas or any new perspectives or any new wisdom, right? So it's very important that you separate that line from loneliness and solitude, and you see the importance of periods of solitude. Point number 2, and we spoke about this before, is silence sharpens self-awareness. Time alone gives you space to reflect, hear your inner voice, and process your thoughts without distraction. If you didn't check out the episode on self-awareness, I'll put it up here and you guys could listen to it, but it's just as important as that, right? Let's say you're in a social setting constantly, right? And you can't see how people treat you, you can't see how people, project on you or whatever the case may be. It's because you're lacking self-awareness, and the only way to become more self-aware is to be alone and reflect on how you think, how you respond to people, and your actions, right? So this silence, this solitude could be looked at as a very important thing in your life and in your growth, because you're able to reflect on those decisions and see where it is that you are not self-aware in and how it's affecting you currently. So I think it's super important that the concept of silence sharpening your self-awareness is great. And I think that's when you could maybe spend some time at the end of the day to be in solitude, maybe 20 minutes before you go to bed. No phone, no book, no nothing, just thinking about what happened, where you're going, whatever the case may be. The third point is your identity shouldn't depend on others. If you always need company to feel okay, you're outsourcing your worth. Learn to validate yourself, right? And this is why many people struggle with the concept of solitude and the concept of being alone, is because they get all their happiness and all their pleasure from being with someone, from constantly seeking others' validation, right? They won't achieve a goal and be happy with themselves that they did it and happy with the work that they put in order to get that result. No, they will need to go tell someone right away, or, you know, they'll want to see someone else validate how they look or how they feel, right? That's why plenty of people, when they get a haircut or something new, they'll ask someone, how do I look? It's not like, if you really enjoyed your haircut, if you really enjoyed how you look, you just look at yourself and be like, yeah, I look good. I like the way I look. And that's the biggest thing, right? And I know sometimes it could be contradictory from the content I post, because I post content like physique photos and all this stuff in me training. And maybe some people take it as like I'm trying to get validated by others by saying, oh, look, this guy goes to the gym consistently. Oh, look, this guy's doing this guy's doing that. But at the end of the day, I hope it doesn't come across as that, because when I do post that type of content, it's more like inspirational, and I want you to believe that you could do it as well. So I think that's an important point as well, is that your identity shouldn't depend on others. You shouldn't have to feel validated by other people's opinions. You should be validated by what you do, the actions you take on a daily basis, and how you make yourself feel, right? The next point is aloneness builds emotional strength. Sitting with discomfort teaches you how to regulate your emotions instead of avoiding them. And this is important. I think when you're going through something negative in your life and a problem, I think there's a healthy balance of sitting alone, thinking about the situation and overcoming it yourself, and also being around others, right? When you sit with discomfort and you sit with your issues and you think about, okay, this needs to be fixed, this is uncomfortable, I can't just forget about this thing because it's clearly, destroying my life, or it's clearly not allowing me to push forward. If you're able to sit with those uncomfortable feelings, you'll be able to, be okay with them and understand them and embrace them and then move forward, right? The best example I have is when I was trying to figure out all this business stuff. It was uncomfortable. I didn't have the answers, but did I just distract myself all day from feeling like that? No, I sat with it because I knew it was a part of the process. So I think that's super important as well, is just when you're in those uncomfortable situations or uncomfortable feelings, just understand that it's you embracing that concept of the journey, that process of the journey is what allows you to push forward and what allows you to keep striving. Because if you just distract yourself from those feelings, you try to forget about them, but when you go back to it, when you're alone again, it's always there. So you need to become comfortable with it, because that is why people scroll all day. That is why people call someone the second they have some downtime. That is why people, try to get to sleep as quick as possible, because they don't want to be left alone with their thoughts, right? So when you're alone, you're able to deal with these thoughts more frequently, and you're able to digest them and not let them ruin your life, right? The fifth and final point is creating versus consuming. Solitude is where your best ideas are born. Use alone time to create, not just binge content or escape from your reality. And this is the reality. That is why people say shower thoughts. When you're in the shower, there's no music playing, and you're just, doing your thing. You start to have ideas for whatever it may be. There's so many times I've had podcast ideas, podcast topics, even my own personal content is just when I'm like going about my life and I'm not doing anything. I'm not distracting myself, right? Sometimes I'll be working on one business and, it's like a tedious task that just needs to be done. And then I'll think of content ideas and I write them down right away because my mind is clear, right? So that is the importance of like why people should meditate as well, because you'll have great ideas come to your head when your mind is clear, right? So if you focus on ideas and creating content or creating just whatever it is that you want in your life, in those moments alone, you'll see that the best ideas will come from those situations, right? So I just want you to, to sum up this whole entire podcast, I want you to change your perspective on being alone and why it could be a good thing. Because there are going to be times where you're going to feel alone, if you're in a grind phase of your life where you're constantly working, you're constantly hustling, you don't have much social time to, see friends or meet new people, embrace this and see the value in it for now, because it won't last forever. It doesn't. Eventually you'll have more free time. If you're someone that's building a business, you'll see that in the beginning it's like it's all you're doing all day every day, but then eventually it becomes it eventually becomes a point where you could kind of back off from all the work and spend more time with people, but just see the value in that solitude when it comes into your life. I hope you guys found value in this podcast. If you did, remember to like, comment, subscribe, and follow us on Spotify, and let me know any other future topics you'd like me to discuss, and I'll be sure to take them into consideration. We gain insight in order to move forward in life. Take care, everybody, and I'll catch you guys on the next episode. Brush a coal to a diamond, eyes forever shining. Your beauty alone inspire a nigga to rhyming.